Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is building a high-performance carrier network with my friend Barry Aumiller. How's it going, Barry?
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me. It's going awesome. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday to you, too. So, Barry, please introduce yourself and your company, where you're calling from today.
Yeah, Barry Aumiller. I'm founder of Bear Ventures. I'm here in Wildwood, Missouri, a suburb of St. Louis.
Very nice. So what does Bear Ventures do?
Yeah, so Bear Ventures builds a high-performance carrier network for enterprise shippers. This is what I've done for over 18 years now.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, so basically prevent the carriers, because I've been around the block in the last 18 years, and I've been with the best carriers out there. And seeing all the different aspects that makes a trucking company really
but you're not a freight broker. You got a little different model.
Move in the right direction and scale representing the proper way.
Selected carriers.
There's a lot of right ways to do it and wrong ways to do it.
So, but you're representing these guys, so you get paid by the carrier. You're not a freight broker, but you still get paid by the carrier. So you're representing the carriers. And I know we'll talk about this a little more, but you're working with a whole bunch of carriers that you already like.
Yeah, just a handful, few, that I have direct contact with the ownership, and I know that their operations, people are bought into the program with the owner. They're champion, hey, sustainability and slow and steady growth, wins in the long run.
Yep. I think this is a very attractive model for carriers, because a lot of carriers, especially if it's super high volume, and I know that's kind of what you're involved with, they don't want necessarily a freight broker involved. Freight brokers are great. No hate here. But sometimes the carriers, and I think it's 70% of the time, there's no broker involved. And I think a lot of them would prefer to have a direct relationship with the shipper. And if we're looking at the economics of a carrier, the $50 or $100 that went to that broker might be the difference between a good OR and a bad OR for these guys.
Correct. That little number becomes a very big number at the end of the week, the end of the month, the end of the year. And that's where the shippers also some potential savings as well, 7 to 10%, maybe 15%. If you're in a more strategic mode or different niche, so to speak.
Right. And so I know you've been doing this a minute, a lot of companies come to you and say, hey, we need some help with our carrier network. Help us get this better high performing. We're going to talk today as if we're starting from scratch, but I know from talking to you in the past that a lot of times you're just coming in to fix some problems where they call you and say, hey, look, we've got 80% of it down pat, but there's some lanes that are falling down. If you have the right carriers that you're representing, you say that this works.
Yeah, with the right market or right lanes, the right capacity at the right time.
The right peeps. So Barry, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started Bear Ventures.
Yeah, so grew up here locally, sort of Chesterfield, sort of the backwoods. So, really just humble beginnings. My dad was a union carpenter for over 40 years and had his custom home business and commercial near the end. So I know what quality work looks like. And my mom did retail and some banking. And then my brother was 6 years older than me. He was a Mizzou grad. So I always grew up playing football against my brother's buddies that were 6 years older than me. So I learned quickly how to adapt, and you better be quick and you better be tough. So, sports is always good. And bass fishing and golf, I love those as well.
So Barry, give us some career highlights before you started Bear Ventures.
Yeah, so dispatching as an intern, with Prime Incorporated, largest refrigerated trucking company in North America. They have went now from 3,000 trucks on up to 6,500 trucks.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a lot. So one fleet had up to 70 teams, And then on the weekends, or after hours, you'd be watching two of those fleets. That's 140 drivers, uh, basically team drivers on trucks. So that's actually 240 people all together at one time. So a lot of planning, and I kind of started to see the significance of contract freight and the reliability. And then I went over to Hogan for 9 years and did 4 years as cradle to the grave brokerage for corporate accounts, and then worked my way into outside sales where I went from 3 million one year to 6 million the next. And then eventually when I left, I had 9 million out of a $40 million book of business for brokerage. I did cross sell on the asset one way as well. And then I did take a cup of coffee during COVID. That was a lot of fun. IMC, where the railroads were all over the place, but I was able to do the same thing: 3 million one year, 6 million the next. And then ultimately GTS, they run 300 trucks, started a contract freight program and built a brokerage for them as well. That was supplementary. And it was awesome. We went from 7 million the first year into 14 million halfway through the next year, until I sort of had an opportunity to have some equity in a company. Things fell apart. I was consulting for an asset-based carrier on the side. So that's how Bear Ventures actually started.
Nice, nice. And, while we were prepping for this podcast, you said that you felt pretty lucky that you ended up at some of the biggest carriers, and you also worked at a brokerage. So you've always kind of worked with the biggest shippers, with these enterprise shippers. And you've also worked with carriers that have enterprise accounts. And then you also did the brokerage side. And you said you did a little bit of the intermodal too, which is not a bad thing to know these days. But which allows you now to kind of quickly assess what's going on when you walk into a shipper, especially the enterprise shippers where they're doing quite a bit of biz. And I told you this, I worked at a smaller 3PL. We didn't have a chance always to work with the enterprise shippers. Now, we did a few accounts that way, and but most brokers, most carriers never have the chance to play what I'll call in the biggest leagues, right? The big leagues. They're playing in the minor leagues. They're like, hey, we moved 20 shipments for this company. It's still good business. I'm not putting it down, but there's a big difference when you say, hey, I'm going to work for one of the big trucking companies, and we're going to work with some of the biggest shippers in the world. It's a different playing field.
For sure. There's a lot going on, and you sort of build these synergies, and you realize, hey, like these relationships are here to stay because they work great. Everybody's happy. So
yeah. So I want to talk to you about we had 3 points, and one of them has a lot of points underneath it, but how do we go about building a high performance carrier network? And I know we're prepping and talking about this. You said, Joe, this could be like a 4-hour deal, which I agree, but we're going to nail it down to an hour. And this is the fast version, but we could go into a lot more detail, especially when we talk about developing that carrier network. But what's the first thing you're looking for when you are helping somebody build a high performance carrier network?
Yeah, shipper of choice, and making sure that their house is in order, and a willingness to partner into that marriage sort of for the long term.
Yeah, if you're not right on the shipper side, like you aren't paying your bills on time, if you're not treating carriers right, if you're not getting them unloaded and loaded on a timely basis, no sense saying, hey, we're going to go out and get the very best carriers, because surprise, the best carriers don't want to work with you.
Yeah, the whispers at the truck stop start to get a little louder and louder about this company or that company or this location.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because when you talk about enterprise shippers, sometimes, if you look at, a company like Walmart, they got, I'm guessing hundreds of locations, if not thousands of locations that have to be delivered to. And it's usually not they're doing poorly. They might say, hey, this is the area we're struggling with. And then maybe that's where they're bringing you in to say, hey, help us. Most of the time when you get to the enterprise level, you're doing a pretty good job on your freight.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be just a difference of going from live loads into a drop trailer program, so to speak, especially with Walmart. I had that account for a long time and knew it intimately and grew it to great heights. A lot of carriers start to say, "Oh, that market works," and then they're dropping in that area, and they can get in and get out quickly, and it helps everybody.
Yeah, and it's funny how things you get everything set up, and I know this has happened to me. You get everything set up, and it's just perfect, and then one carrier says, "Hey, we don't want that lane anymore," or they want to raise their price, and they got some other business, and all of a sudden you're like, "Hey, that was one of our good carriers," and then something else happens, and then one day you go, "God, this was running like a top." 6 months ago, and now it feels broken. So this idea of building a high performing carrier network, it's never ending. You're building it only for it to fall apart a little bit and they have to build it again, which keeps Barry and his team in business. Yeah. So first off, the first point is shipper of choice. And the second point is, and you've already told me this, so I know this. The second point is you're looking and saying carrier network development. And so what do you mean by that at the high level?
So really, your service footprint, starting to specialize in uh, an actual niche or certain vertical, certain customers, you know, lane synergies. Do you have like a top 10 best lanes that you're going to build around the density? You know, are they doing, driver demographics so they know where drivers are coming out of, they're domiciled? Because that goes back to capacity, uh, financial stability.
Yep. So let's tick through these things. So the first thing you said was service footprint. So I want to make sure that, well, I should say you're doing this. When you're talking to this enterprise shipper and they say, "Hey, Barry, help us. We got a problem with this lane or these 4 lanes or this region." You say, "Okay, I got carriers. I know carriers in those lanes. I've been working with these guys. I've already vetted them." And what you're looking for in them is they actually want that lane. And there's some lane synergies, meaning we're already running in that lane and we could use some more freight in it. And making sure that and what the trucking companies want to make sure is they're never empty. So they're looking for that same kind of relationship, right? So they're looking to work with someone like you who can plug them in at an enterprise shipper and say, "Hey, I know you're doing a lot of onesie twosie over here. How about I plug you in over here at an enterprise shipper who's got steady freight? If you got a steady truck, we got steady freight." So first it's the service footprint. And then you said something about financial stability. Please elaborate.
Yeah, just, it can be the DMB. It can be just, hey, what are you guys, what's your break even per mile? Does the carrier know that? They should have a pretty good idea, because ultimately you're an asset. You have a lot of fixed costs, a lot of overhead in these trucks, trailers, drivers, and the whole team. So that's the beauty of it, because you can start to line up all the dots in the markets and really get to where you're sustainable. And that's the biggest thing I see carriers is they're going from transactional into more contractual. And that's one way to scale with capacity.
Yep. And the problem with this business is it is really hard. I said to you the other day when we were talking about this is we always see carriers grow freight brokerages, which is great. I think it's a nice fit. And you told me you think that that's the great way to grow your business. But if anybody ever decides we're going to get rid of one of our businesses, they always get rid of the carrier. It's a hard business. And it's if you don't have the financial part right, which means a lot of things. I'm no expert in that, but you got to be able to buy. You have to get good enough credit that you can buy trucks properly. You have to be. You mentioned Dun and Bradstreet. Yeah. By the way, you can only compare the Dun and Bradstreet to other trucking companies because it's a tough business. And but nobody who's a big shipper wants to start working with a carrier who's in financial trouble. And I know you don't want to bring somebody who's in financial trouble to one of your enterprise shippers.
Correct. Yeah, I mean they got to be making the right decisions. You know, the truck and trailer procurement, running that later model equipment, and then the maintenance of that equipment. Some are leasing, some are buying. You know, to really those type of things with the maintenance and all that. That's going to keep the driver driving, and when the wheels are turning, it's making money. Everybody's happy. But you know, when you're taking time out and you're not hitting the road, you know, when you're scheduled to be off the road, it's going to hit your P&L.
Yep. So we talked about service footprint and lane synergy. So the carrier has to have the right synergy with your potential customer. I mean, financial stability, we talked about specialization, similar customers, right? So specialization and similar customers means that they get it. So if I'm already working with Target and then you say, hey, I want to plug you in over at Walmart or at Costco or somewhere else, I'm not brand new in the business. I understand retail. So I know you've mentioned that to me before. Please elaborate on that one.
Yeah. So just, you know, like Walmart, I mean, most all the CPG, you know, uh, they all are similar in that, hey, they want this freight delivered at this specific time, or they're expecting it on this particular date at the DC. I mean, you see this in automotive as well. You know, the food companies, the beverage companies, the finished goods, retail, a lot of that. So you really need to be hyper focused on performance, on time pickup, on time delivery.
I always say the same thing. I don't want you learning on my dime. Um,
Yeah.
so if you're going to work with me, I want to know that you've worked with similar customers. I want to know that you get it. And by the way, that's the same old thing. It's like somebody saying, I don't want to hire anyone with experience. Well, how does anyone get experience? I don't know. Figure that out on your own. I just know this. I don't want to work with somebody who's brand new to this business because every business has its nuances. And I'd rather you learn that somewhere else. So what's the next thing that we should be looking for when we're building that carrier network?
Yeah, the tech, you know, because you're moving a higher volume. Are they going to be EDI capable or API capable? Is it going to integrate tracking with the trucks, the trailers, the cell phone to give you that visibility level that you need to make, you know, decisions ultimately for if a shipment is going to run late? Can, you know, they hit another vendor for that product or the same, you know, do they have to ship another of the same PO? These two type of situations. So, you know, visibility is key.
Yeah. And it's funny because tech went to like, oh, we don't care what tech you have, to suddenly in the last decade, like you must have. I need to be able to track that truck. And when the ELD mandate, the electronic logging device, happened, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, the good part about it is ELDs are in every truck, well, most every truck, and so is the tracking in all those trucks.
And there's a way to see if they're running their ELDs or not too. Highway's great, great
Yeah.
for that.
But it's funny because the ELD mandate, I don't know that it saved any lives. I know it took capacity out of the market. I don't hear a lot of people saying, oh, thank God we got that. But it has really been an explosion of visibility technology. There would be, all the companies like the Project 44s and the Macro Points and who am I missing there? Well, there's a dozen other companies, but all those companies that'll give us the visibility that we so value now when we're developing our carrier networks. So what's the next one after all those cool tech things? What else do we need when you're developing a carrier network?
Yeah, going to equipment with trucks, trailers. Are they able to run drop trailer programs? You know, that kind of to me separates the kids from the adults if they can.
So what is drop and hook for those who are not doing it every single day?
So basically, you'll just pre-drop a trailer in at a shipper or receiver, and then they will tell you, the shipper will tell you, or the receiver will tell you, give you appointment time or a ready time. And then basically you plan your driver to show up. Sometimes they might be able to load all day because it's already on the trailer. They loaded it the previous evening. So your driver can come in there, pick it up, get the BOL, hit the road, you know, hook up, hit the road, 30 minutes. I mean, it's just great.
And that's in contrast to a live load or a live unload. So the live unload is where I back up and they load my truck, and it might take a few hours to get that all taken care of.
Yeah, good old floor load, that you got to count all the pieces and
Well, they might not have people available to load your truck when you
right,
get there,
labor. Yeah.
and takes time. So the live load and then the other side, which is the live unload, those are kind of balancing acts, right? So it has to kind of work. The timing is the timing. The nice thing about the drop and hook for the driver perspective is when I drop that truck, I drop off a trailer, and then you call me and say it's full. I can pick it up when I want to pick it up. So I can start to work around my driver's schedule. And I know carriers want to be able to get their drivers, they want to get them optimized. They want to make sure that these guys are getting the most miles that they can get in a day. And watching someone load your truck or unload your truck doesn't get you paid.
Yeah, it doesn't help out any, and then hey, look, all right, you come in, you drop that trailer. Now the shipper's got another trailer that they can load that day or next day, and the next guy coming can be ready and do the same thing. So
Problem with the drop and hook, I know it's something we got to get to, but it's a little extra cost because those trailers cost money, and I have to own more trailers. So what's a trailer cost?
right now, I mean, on the leasing side, it's between $400 and $500 a month on a brand new one, so to speak. But if you're going out to buy, it's going to cost you, close to 75,000, for like a reefer unit, probably a little less on the dry side, minus 10,000. So around 60 or so. But at one time, I know the reefers were going for like over 100, I think I think there was a lot of gouging going on there for a while. So things should start to balance out. You're starting to.
Right. So we've talked. So when I'm developing a carrier network, or when you're developing a carrier network, the first thing you're looking at is the service footprint, lane synergies. If there's not that, who cares, right? Then financial stability. You only want to work with companies that are in good shape. Specialization, similar customers, super important. We talked about tech and TMS. We talked about equipment. They have to have the trucks. And ideally, they have to have some extra trailers so they can participate in drop and hook freight. Because I think some of the enterprise players are more likely to say, we like drop and hook. Helps them schedule their time too. What's the next thing that you're looking for when you're developing a carrier network?
For sure, operational excellence. You want to be a scorecard superstar, so to speak. You want to stand out.
And so what do you put on that scorecard?
So really, typically the shippers all have them, the larger ones. So it'll just be on-time pickup, on-time delivery, and then your visibility, and then your tender acceptance or rejection. And then all those should be in the 90% range. High performing carriers are typically around 98% or higher on time delivery. You always want to be hanging around in the 90s. Sometimes, you do take on a project that might be a challenge, but you're a little bit upfront. If you have that relationship, you want to establish that relationship with the shipper. Just say, hey, yeah, we're shifting capacity to service this lane for you. Give us a couple weeks to, get things really rolling smooth for you.
Right. So you need to have that operational excellence. And again, you can't. I know you work with a lot of carriers. you can't bring a carrier into your network to bring to your enterprise shippers if they don't have the operational excellence. It doesn't work. So, what about capacity?
Yeah, so really just that kind of goes into the footprint as well. Just having available capacity, driving. It's on the carrier knowing that what their supply and demand is, so to speak. How can they shift that capacity, or how can they add capacity into that certain market? You just make it happen. A lot of times you'll just take brokered freight into that market until you start to establish a new lane going into that market, and preferably it's more desirable market, or there's some prospects there that you have where you really see going from maybe 10 loads a day to 20 loads. Maybe your goal is 30 by the end of the year. Those type of scenarios.
Right. And so the carriers you're looking to work with that you want to bring to your enterprise shippers, they have to have capacity. It can't, you have to have the capacity for the opportunity. So if you're a smaller carrier, it's hard to say, yeah, we have 4 trucks and we'd like to work with the biggest companies. No, you're more likely to work with a medium or smaller company because you're looking and saying, look, I want companies that can grow in that lane. And so if they say, hey, this is working, we got thousands of trucks and we're willing to buy hundreds more, if there's the opportunity, that's the kind of business so when we're talking about the enterprise shippers, that's what they expect. And that's what you're looking for also.
For sure.
So what's the last thing? I know we could probably go on and talk about what you're looking for in your carriers all day, but what's the last thing you're looking for when you're looking at these companies?
Talent, the people aspect, are they the right players in the right position to take on these growth, or adapting from transactional freight to contractual freight in order to scale the business and, add resources? Are they coachable? Are they a good leaders? It really makes a big difference. It's somewhere you want to be.
Yeah. When I've looked into this in the past, I used to say, I'm looking for is the senior management team, has that been there for a minute? It's kind of scary. And we've all seen it where you go, oh yeah, it's brand new managed. The owner's no longer part of it. Maybe you just sold it. And now it's like brand new CEO, brand new team. Is there some continuity in that senior management team? And it does, again, there are no absolutes here, but when you see tons of turnover and you say, oh, there's no dedicated headcount and there may be this whole industry is lean. But if it's too lean where you go, it's so lean that no one answers the phone when I call over there, that's not going to work. So the people and the talent, it's a lot of intangibles in there, but if it's not there, you notice.
Yeah, for sure. If it's somewhere the people want to be, or is it, more of a just kind of afterthought? This is my job. I'm showing up.
Well, this is such a tough business, especially we've had since COVID. It's been a little rough, and so I have empathy for everybody who's gotten some bumps and bruises over the last couple of years. And again, you see it all the time. There'll be a carrier that developed a big brokerage, and then they said, oh, you know what? Brokerage is better. Let's get out of this. Then they get rid of their carrier. You don't ever see it the other way around. You don't see a broker say, oh, we bought a carrier and then decide to close our brokerage.
Again, I think it's all about that leadership. And I mean, you see Prime, you see Schneider, you see US Express, you see Knight Swift, you see some of these larger companies, JB Hunt, I mean, they love their assets and they've grown significantly. It's because they got the right processes in place for growth, and they know how to scale the business.
Yeah, you know it when you see it, huh? So the first thing we talked about is shipper of choice. And so when you're looking to build a high performance network, your first thing is, hey, let's make sure that the shipper is in good shape, that they're ready and willing to partner. And then we just talked about what you're looking for when you're vetting your carrier network. And I'm going to summarize some of these, then Service footprint, lane synergies, financial stability, specialization, similar cost, tech. The tech is more important than ever. Obviously, equipment. The ultimate technology is equipment. And do you have enough trailers to drop and hook? Because a lot of the big boys like drop and hook. Obviously, you have to have capacity. You have to have that operational excellence, as you said, be a scorecard superstar. And then last but not least, you got to have the talent. You got to have the management team. You got to have the drivers. You have to have all the support staff. It's either there or it's not. It's noticeable and it's not. So what's the next point that you're looking at when you're trying to build this high performance?
Yeah, we were kind of hinting at this one, but cultural fit, matchmaker,
Yeah, you're matching the carrier to the shipper and they better fit.
Absolutely, 100%.
And that's not where they're from. Nobody cares if you're from Mexico or Indonesia. It doesn't matter. It's sometimes there's groups, and I mentioned this while we were prepping. You ever work with the guys who swear a lot, and then you see there's some guy who doesn't and is offended by it, and you're like, oh, okay, this doesn't work. Like, these guys, this is oil and water, and we've all been part of great teams where it's just like everybody's on the same page, and it's your job as the matchmaker, so to speak, to say, I'm going to bring these two together if I don't think there's a great fit.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think what goes to that is you start business. Is there any? It could be even before you start business, but is there what's the communication sequence look like? And once you get started, it's daily, it's weekly, and then you're doing in-person meetings. A lot of times, I've done in-person meetings before we start doing business. I mean, biannual, annual, quarterly, it all depends on the relationship, but those are things that you kind of got to map out from the beginning.
Yep. And Tom Peters, kind of one of the original management consultants, used to say the very best business meeting you can have is a barbecue. And he said, you get everybody out there, everybody's having a beer, having something to eat, and it's casual. But he says, all of a sudden, conversations that don't happen in the office start happening at the barbecue. Relationships that weren't quite clicking start to click at the barbecue. And the nature of our business is we don't get together enough. And I joke about it. Somebody texted me the other day and I called them. And they go, oh, going old school on me, huh, Joe? I go, yeah, that's what I do now. I'm not going to text. I'm not against texting. It's just I feel like you don't develop relationships through texting. You got to pick up the phone sometimes.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, you get those calls on the after hours or weekends, you got to need, and somebody's got to be there to answer the call. And that's what I've always done in my career is, hey, let's find a solution, or a Band-Aid for the time being, and make it heal and grow.
I've said this many times on my podcast, probably too many times, but I'll say it again. Any customer or any relationship where they hold you at arm's length, at some point you're going to leave that business or they're going to get rid of you. I've had this happen where people are like, they hold you at arm's length, and then at some point you're like, can we meet? Can I talk to you? Can we do something? And they're like, no, I'm busy. I'm out of town. And then at some point they're like, hey, it ain't working out. You're like, yeah, surprise. I wonder why this isn't working out.
Yeah, you got to take time to develop that.
Also, I'm all for all of the freight fraud solutions, the highways and all those. They're all great. There's another solution, which is you pick up the phone. You are not being defrauded by guys you've been working with for the last 7 years. You're not defrauded by the guy you talk on the phone with once a month.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I'm going to summarize this, and I want your final thoughts on the topic, Barry Aumiller. So I'm talking to my buddy Barry, and we're talking about building high-performance carrier networks. And the first thing you're doing when you're working with these big enterprise shippers is you want to make sure they get their house in order, because you don't want to bring your selected carriers who you've already vetted, who you like, you're part of their team. You don't want to bring them to a situation that isn't right. But most enterprise shippers are already in good shape. They might have a location or two that's falling down, but that's why they call you. so so when you're looking to develop your carrier network, you gave me some points here. So service footprint, lane synergies, that's got to be right. They have to want to work in that lane. They have to be financially stable. The carriers you're looking for have to have the right specialization. So if you're bringing retail business, they have to do retail business. They should have similar customers. Tech obviously has got to be right. They have to have the right equipment. It might be specialized equipment, whatever it is. You got to have the equipment. Obviously, drop and hook is better today. So you should have some extra trailers. Obviously need capacity. We want to see operational excellence in their trucks and in their management team, everything working. People and talent has to be right. And then last but not least, cultural fit. So put a big old bow on this one, Barry. Final thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say also, that footprint and market thing with the carrier network development, it's competitive pricing, because unless it's an extravagant, details of shipping, it's not going to have an extravagant cost. I think we saw a lot of that during COVID, so to speak. Now we're more during regular times. So, it's when you can be very competitive in an RFP and be able to scale to meet the needs and the growth to basically just be a better partner. But all in all, I've been building these high performance carrier networks for a while for enterprise shippers, and it's easier said than done. And I've been blessed to work with some of the best ones out there.
Yep. Well, I think it's interesting because there's a lot of companies, and I'll throw myself in that category. I didn't always work with enterprise shippers. I had a few of them, but not many. And it is different. And you have bars higher. And we were kind of a niche player in that. And then when you get to the big leagues, and you started off working with the big companies, the big shippers, big carriers, and then you've always worked with the big shippers. So you have a sense for how that all works. So, Barry, what conferences will we see you and the fine folks from Bear Ventures at?
Yeah, definitely Food Shippers of America in Palm Springs.
Very nice.
Coming up. Yeah, not a bad place. And then Manifest in Las Vegas is definitely one that is on the list this year.
I will be at Manifest, and I always tell people I'll see you there, but there's like 4,500 people there, so it's hard to see everybody. And then if I do see you, Barry, I'll be like waving. You'll be talking to a potential customer and be like, "Later, Joe. Later."
Yeah, you give them the wave in, or like, yeah, 1 second,
Well, you can high five me as I walk by, Barry. So I know you said you're doing some traveling besides the conferences.
Oh yeah, I've got a trip here this weekend for Monday morning to golf down in Dallas for a charity event for one of my customers. So that after hours, kind of building all those relationships. Those are the one that I truly, just value the most.
Yep, I know you're on the road a lot, so that's why you're busy. So. Anyway, Barry, thank you so much for taking the time.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Joe. Enjoyed it.
All right. And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.